Accessing agent files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now here's Brian.
That's right, the Danny Tanner of technology, making your devices so lean and clean that you could raise the Olsen twins in complete safety, baby. The golden stallion, the man of tomorrow. Reporting from Ice Planet Zero, let's get into the show. The Danny Tanner of technology. I know, right? Hopefully people will get that reference. But anyway, wow, a lot to get into this week. The past couple weeks, been doing a lot of talking about blockchain technology and Bitcoin stuff, and the hate mail has been furious. Or is furious the right word? It's been nonstop, however you want to put that. But that's fine. Good. That means people listen. So anyway, let's get into the random access, because we got a whole hell of a lot to cover. And actually I don't really plan on talking Bitcoin this week. So if that's what you listen to this show for, well, sorry. We got, but really good stuff to cover all the same. Really interesting topics, I think. So let's do it. First off, with the random access, Ford is now building, or they are planning to start building, cars that will keep the speed limit. So this isn't necessarily self-driving, but it is, in a way, I guess, self-governing, in that the car will keep itself from going beyond the speed limit. Now, it'll know the speed limit. I'm guessing they didn't mention that it would use GPS. I imagine it'll use GPS to some point, or, to some degree. But I guess the main thing will be a camera in the front of the car that will look for speed limit signs, and then it will, adjust accordingly. Now, the idea of, this is one of the major things with self-driving cars that a lot of people actually think is the reason they'll never exist, is that, and this isn't even a self-driving car, is that this is going to put the kibosh on a whole lot of tickets, speeding tickets and whatever, and that, the police will essentially, will be losing out on tons of funding. So, and I think that's an interesting point. I still think that self-driving cars are far more concerning than the notion of somehow, people thinking that they'll never happen because the police will just lose funding or something. I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, you know what? I've been thinking about this for a while. I think this is ridiculous. If speed limits are a thing, like, why are cars even made to go 100 miles or 200 miles per hour? Say if you have like a Aston Martin, Vanquish or something, like, why even do that if this is the case? Yeah, well, you can drive on the Autobahn in Germany, blah, 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 blah. I know. But in America, like, why is it even bothered with? I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with any of this. My response to this is that actually, and this is something that we've talked about on Sovryn Tech, and it's something that we're seeing happening more, is to where police, due to having cameras put on police officers, body cameras, those are getting federal funding. And so, in my opinion, what's going to probably end up happening, and I know this is going to sound, this might sound kind of Alex Jonesy, but regardless, I think that police will just become pretty much a federal entity. They won't be a localized entity anymore. And so they'll have all the funding they need, from, of course, taxpayer dollars in that way. So I would venture that maybe that's what's going to happen, because I don't see self-driving cars stopping anytime soon. I think that's going to be a technology that'll be an absolute reality. I also think it's a terrible idea. I've talked about it many times on Sovryn Tech. There's a lot of reasons why, to say nothing of the crash algorithm. Okay, that's probably the biggest one. The notion that there is a point where they are building algorithms into these cars to where they are going to decide how many people will die if I hit the car and how many people will die if I engage in this collision, and how many people will die if I don't. And if you happen to be the lesser of the two, then you die to, essentially 1 or 2 people will die to save, 20 or something. And that a numbers game like that is in no way up to, in my opinion, that kind of thing should never be handed over to a computer. So, I mean, that's the initial one, but there's a million other reasons why self-driving cars are just an atrocious idea. But I don't think that, the police losing funding because they won't be able to write as many tickets. I actually, these days, as I've been thinking about it more, I don't think that's going to be an actual issue because we're already seeing the federalization and the federal funding of police forces. So anyway, let's see. Here's a little Facebook news. We talked about Messenger a bit last week about how they started accepting payments. Well, it gets bigger. And I knew about this last week. I just didn't bring it up. But Facebook Messenger is becoming a platform. And, and why is this? Now, what does that mean? The fact that Facebook Messenger is becoming a platform, that's in reference to the fact that now you are going to have interoperability with Messenger where you don't even deal with Facebook. You just deal with Messenger, and to where like Messenger has its own API to where apps can interact more directly with it or even be built on top of it. Completely new apps could be built on top of it. And I think that this speaks to, Facebook's larger goal, perhaps to replace the phone system, right? I mean, everything, supposedly everything's getting disrupted in Silicon Valley. Nothing is safe. And so, the phone system is certainly, why not? Why wouldn't that be the thing that would get disrupted? And so I think that that's part of that, but I think it's something more too. I think that, and I'm not the only one, there's others that have talked about this. I think that there will be, pretty much a general backlash against a lot of social media because people really can't, and it's becoming more and more to head. I'm seeing some Sovereign Tech listeners shared a comic, maybe it was an XMBC, or not X, whatever, SMBC, right? Saturday Morning Breakfast, whatever, a comic with me that talked about the Dunbar number and how people really cannot handle the amount of interaction that they have. And so I think that there's going to be overall, and Facebook knows this, we've talked about this before, how Facebook has an yet unreleased app, and they've had it for about a year now, that allows you, that works like Path, like the social network Path, where it only allows you to interact with like 40 people at a time. Or how Facebook Groups is a separate app now. So many things are getting separated from the main Facebook because I think Zuckerberg knows that model is not going to last forever. People can't take it. They can't handle it. And the algorithms cause as much trouble, as they solve things. So this shows a general trend, I think, to more personable interactions that humans can actually handle, more meaningful interactions. I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing because also Facebook is still wanting to harvest all the information about you. And of course, Facebook dropped XMPP, probably in large part to allow for Messenger to be a platform. Nobody's mentioning that, but I'm telling you here, but that dropping of XMPP really got rid of the ability to encrypt the use of Facebook Messenger now. So Messenger is, again, it's real cut and dry. You just look at the permissions that Messenger needs, and it should terrify the fuck out of everybody, right? But that doesn't mean you can't use it. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, look, your smartphone is a lost cause, by and large. Okay, so, would you install Messenger if that's what's required to do maybe easy Bitcoin payments in the future because they've been working with Circle? We talked about that for months. Yeah, maybe, whatever. Okay. But regardless, that's what's going on with Facebook Messenger. But I think it does show the larger trend that Facebook realizes as a company that the main Facebook social aggregator that it is going to fall away, and that they need to branch out into other things. That's why Groups is a separate app, because groups are very handy because, yeah, you can handle the amount of people that are in groups. Not all. I know there's groups that have, however many thousands of people. Of course, that gets ridiculous. But regardless, it allows for that. And Facebook still gets to collect all the information about you. So what do they care? And, also the fact that I wonder when this is, just real quick, I wonder when it's going to happen that in Messenger you're going to start getting ads. I guarantee that's going to happen. With it having an API, that's going to happen. Let's see, other kind of social networks, kind of a social network. Twitch was cracked this week. And everybody was kind of told, look, change your password, do this. As far as I know, they still didn't implement two-factor authentication, which could have solved a lot of this issue. There was Slack this week. Slack, which is a popular group think tank software, a group cooperation software, kind of like an IRC alternative of sorts. And I've been using it recently, and it's really cool. But it got cracked, but they did the right thing. They set up two-factor authentication. They set up all that stuff to do it right. But apparently that happened like a month ago. But Twitch got cracked, and they're not really doing a whole lot to help with security. Of course, their parent company now is Amazon, and Amazon does generally jack shit as far as security, which is interesting. Because you know what, I'm going to skip ahead because I wanted to talk about Amazon a bit. Speaking about the lack of security that they do, because they came out with a very interesting service this week. But before I do that, I just want to say, the point I want to get out with Twitch getting cracked, I like Twitch. As a gaming, for those that don't know, I didn't even explain what Twitch is. Twitch is a live streaming, generally gaming service, even though it does other kind of it almost does veritable TV shows now. It is often considered to be the only competitor to YouTube. But it is generally for the gaming community and whatever. And so I don't have a problem with Twitch per se, but it really does highlight the fact of, maybe thinking about just how many services and how many different accounts you have, and how much like the Internet of Things to be hacked, all these accounts are things just waiting to be hacked. They really are. I've said this before, but any account you have online, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And putting in two-factor can really help out with that. No doubt. It's not foolproof, but it's a whole hell of a lot better. Okay. But it's a matter of time. And so I think it's important for people to consider, maybe taking a good long look at all the accounts you have and just eliminating the non-essentials. Because each one of them is a backdoor into some part of your life, so consider that. And again, like I said, Amazon doesn't really do security right at all. Pretty much any third party research or third party audit that gets done, they fail with flying colors, which is unfortunate because this week they came out with they are the second company to announce that they will offer unlimited cloud storage with Cloud Drive. Now, Microsoft with OneDrive was the first one to do it, and now they offer OneDrive is $100. I think it adds up to like $100 a year or something at the end of the day, or maybe it's even $120. But with OneDrive, you get 5 unlimited accounts for that $120. Okay, not just one, so you could share it with your whole family, and you also get constant updates, and you get the latest version of Office, which is still the standard across enterprise, okay, which for, even one man or, one woman entrepreneurial ventures, if you're going to deal with other companies, you pretty much have to use Office in a lot of ways for full compatibility. I'm not saying Office is a good thing. I'm just saying, okay, but you get a lot for that $100 or $120. Okay, you get that unlimited storage. Now, Amazon's doing it, their unlimited cloud drive, for $60 a year, about half the price. Okay, now there's a couple issues with this. First off is that I was incredibly annoyed at the fact that pretty much every tech source out there, VentureBeat, even TechCrunch, who I generally like, a lot of these different ones, all of them completely ignored the fact that OneDrive offers the same deal, and they actually do it a whole hell of a lot better. In fact, it was creepy how much they completely ignored what OneDrive offers to you, and that they just didn't talk about it. It almost led me to believe that Amazon was, shelling out some gelt to each one of these, journalistic institutions and saying, hey, here, just make it sound like this is the newest, hottest thing, and that, this has never been done before. or that somehow this is this is like the best deal going. But it's not, and I want to say why Amazon isn't. And of course, I've talked many times about how Amazon is literally trying to take over the world. And, a good 2/3 of the internet runs on Amazon's servers. And as well, then the other third is just about getting run by Microsoft Azure now, of all ironies. So, but the point I want to bring to you is that, again, they fail all of their security checks as to where Microsoft does not. Okay. So that's problem number one, is that what you're putting up there is not going to be secure. No, nothing is necessarily secure from the NSA. I'm aware of that. But just from, your average bad actor, it's far less secure. But then also the interface for everything, for all of Amazon's products is terrible. I mean, it's really bad. Like the Amazon Cloud Drive, like they really, if they were going to come out with this, they should have done a huge upgrade of what it's like to interact with Cloud Drive, and they didn't. And it sucks. Like it is so bad. And I'm shocked. Admittedly, I'm shocked for it to only cost like $60-$70. I'm amazed that they didn't just make this part of Prime and like charge $150 for Prime or something. Because then that would have been, I would have said, okay, yeah, this is the better deal than OneDrive. And it would have been an unbeatable deal, because then at that point, because you can upload music, you can upload all this stuff, okay, with Amazon, with the Cloud Drive, you would potentially have unlimited everything and ease of access to it, like unlimited books through the Kindle app, unlimited music through Amazon Music, which, works very much like Google Play Music All Access or Xbox Music and the others, where it has, and Spotify, where it has all the, music you can stream and whatever, that you don't have to actually own. So then it would have been a really impressive package. And then, of course, you had Kindle Unlimited. I mean, there's so many things like they're really going for this whole unlimited thing and just trying to undercut everybody. So, but I think they might have failed on charging, this price for it. I would have maybe tacked it on, I don't know, or maybe they'll end up doing that in the future anyway. But there's another big flaw too that I think is a problem, because that whole notion of everything's unlimited, not necessarily true, because one of the big failures here, in my opinion, is that the limit on the size of the file that you can upload to Amazon Cloud Drive is still 2 gigabytes. I think that's an issue. That's a huge failure on their part. Microsoft OneDrive can do a 10 terabyte or a 10 gigabyte file. Yeah, I think it's a 10 gigabyte file, which is great. I'd still love it to be more. Okay, but you can do a 10 gigabyte file, on an upload. Who would do that? Well, video producer. I mean, there's lots of people that would do that, especially when you're talking about activists who are, constantly uploading video. You can't be hampered. Activists cannot be hampered by file size, limitations with raw video that they put up or whatever. And so this 2 gigabyte thing, that sucks. That's not even going to hold a DVD. And some people still upload ISOs. I understand why. All right, so I think this is a bit of a failure on their part. The other interesting point, though, is that the FAA is starting to allow drones from Amazon, which I find really, really interesting, because Bezos, a couple months back, we talked about it, threatened, saying, if America will not allow me to have my drones, then Amazon will take its business elsewhere. And that obviously freaked the shit out of Congress, out of the FAA, and others. And so that really does show, in my opinion, that fact that the FAA is allowing Amazon drones where they really won't allow much of anybody else. That shows, it really shows corporatism. It shows how it is, this hybrid of government and corporations that are really running the show around the world. And that, both of them are a concern, right? So, I thought that was fascinating. But speaking of, delivery drones, this is something that Google are kind of starting to show their hand here in the delivery business as well, as far as replacing, disrupting things that are, normally part of perhaps the public sector or something that we've relied upon for so long. And that is, they have a product called Pony Express. And Pony Express is just that. It is a system initially for you to be able to pay your bills through Gmail. But in reality, what I think Pony Express is going to end up becoming, and I'm not the only one that said this, other tech commentators have, is this is going to really be the genuine post office killer. This is going to put an end to that entirely. And that's, You may think that initially that's a good thing. Sure, but at the end, it might end up being a bad thing because all that junk mail that you get is now going to, perhaps end up in your Gmail. And I don't think that Google can necessarily, they want to filter that stuff out or whatever, or they show you ads. They can't filter all of this out because then their business model kind of falls apart. So something to look out for. I mean, I'm all for, admittedly, I'm not a supporter of Google, but admittedly, I am all for the U.S. Post Office, being closed and shut down. Game on. I say, do it. So, but that's really what Pony Express is all about with Gmail. It's not just paying bills. This is, a full-on attack, a full-on removal of the post office as we know it. And, I'll admit, I couldn't be happier about that in the end. So one last bit for the random access. This was something interesting. And what I saw, there was an app released this week for Android and iOS called Atari Fit. Yes, that Atari. And what it literally is just that. It is a gamification of fitness, which is not anything new. It's not anything disruptive. It's not a shock. And it's by Atari. And what they essentially do is they've tokenized your workouts to where you get tokens at the end of it. And with those tokens, you can buy, digital tokens, of course, you can, purchase classic Atari games. So that's your incentive, is that at the end of the day, you'll get to play Centipede or whatever. Now, some may be laughing hysterically at this. Honestly, it's a bit of a better payoff than perhaps some gamification, workout apps I've seen. But here's the interesting thing. Because initially, and of all ironies, I know a lot of people are saying it's like, wow, Atari, the company that originally got everybody sitting on their ass instead of working out, right? Whatever. Video games, that video games have nothing to do with the lack of health of people. People have everything to do with their lack of health in their life. Okay. I've played so many video games. Hell, I'm making a video game. Okay. And believe me, it does not interfere with my workouts of any kind, never has. But regardless, Atari, one of the initial things I liked about it was that the app didn't ask me to log in. It said, here, you can just use it. And I was like, oh, that's fucking great. It's about time that app started saying, no, you don't have to log in. You can just use the app, especially when it comes to something like this. Because there's other ones I use like Body Space and stuff like that, where they have a full on login and, it's almost like a social network. Now, Atari Fit does offer that, and so you can log in. And so I was just looking at the settings. I'm like, what do they let you log in with? It's like, oh, they let you log in with Facebook. What a shock. They let you log in with maybe LinkedIn or something. I don't know. And then they let you, but here's the one that got me. They let you log in with Walgreens, with your Walgreens account. And I just instantly said, I was like, aha. And, the app itself is great. I just want to say that. I mean, for what it is, it's fantastic. It hooks up with Google Fit and all that. It really does a good job. It works with Jawbone and all that stuff. If you're into the quantified self, I am not. If you're into it, it's good for what it does. Okay. But when I saw that it connects to Walgreens, I was like, there's a cincher right there. There's what this is really all about. It's connecting you with your pharmacy, connecting you with your insurance companies. And it just, for me, it highlighted so readily and so very, really nondescript how a lot of this, health kit and a lot of this quantified self stuff at the end of the day, in my opinion, is all about feeding information to these corporations, particularly health insurance and, and guys like in Walgreens and all that. And, I think you could end up with that very real nightmare scenario where you go to order a pizza with your smartphone, but your Walgreens account says, oh, what about your blood pressure, buddy? Or whatever the case may be. So I saw that. I deleted the app instantly, as nice as it was. Yes, you don't have to connect it to Walgreens right now. But what happens when Walgreens wants to use Facebook as your login, right? It's like, oh yeah, you can log into Walgreens, but it's real simple. Just use your Facebook account, and then Facebook fucking knows everything. So I don't dig this interconnectedness. I appreciate that Atari made it, gave you the option, but it's like so many things, I do worry that that's a temporary affair. But enough of the kind of bad news stuff. I've got some good news. I love this. And something very early on in Sovryn Tech's history, I actually had the creator, the head guy at Open Garden, okay, which is a mesh networking solution. They also do Fire Chat, which has helped out quite a bit with a lot of movements in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, I'm sure, that we're not even hearing about. Fire Chat. And both very exciting, technologies to be sure. And so they have come out with a third exciting technology. Now, I don't want to get into the debate about open source and all that stuff. Certainly, everybody takes that to their own degree. Okay, but I want to read about this because they tested something out at South by Southwest this past week. We're in the end of March 2015. And this story is coming from The Verge. Meet the off-the-grid chat room that fits in your pocket. Building a local network, one necklace at a time. What if instead of connecting to the phone company, we connected directly to each other's phones? Called mesh networking, the idea has been kicked around for years in hacker circles, but it got a major boost with iOS 7 thanks to the new multi-peer connectivity framework, which that's what FireChat initially used before it came out for Android. FireChat. iPhones were able to connect to each other directly over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. A minor software update with potentially major consequences. FireChat was one of the first apps to seize on the new feature, FireChat, building a mesh-enabled chat app that drew a surprisingly large user base. The app recently reached 5 million users, popping up at music festivals and protests around the world. For protests, it was a way to communicate without routing through potentially hostile carriers, holding out even in the face of an internet blackout. For everyone else, it was just a fun way to jump off the grid. But as the system has grown, it's run up against a serious range problem. The iPhone has a lot less Wi-Fi strength you'd get from a router and can't reach nearly as far. Android phones are still stuck with Bluetooth for multi-peer connections, which is even more limited. FireChat has found the most success in dense crowds, particularly music festivals, but most of the users end up reverting to standard networks as soon as the crowd breaks up. If mesh messaging is ever going to be more than a software flash mob, it's going to need a way to reach farther. But how? Now we're getting a look at FireChat's answer. FireChat. The company is developing a new hardware widget called GreenStone, designed to sit between phones, fill holes in the network, and go places that phones can't go. When the founder first showed me the prototype, he was wearing one around his neck, an easy midpoint between the phone in his pocket and my phone, which I'd left on the other side of the table. The device also bridges over time, storing up to 1,000 messages at once. If you need to send a message to a chat room that's out of range, the GreenStone will store it locally until it can be delivered. That failsafe is important because the underlying network is so choppy. GreenStone is built entirely on Bluetooth, which has limited range and relies heavily on line of sight. If the device is in a crowd of moving people, like a concert, the device will be constantly hopping between connections, moving in and out of dead zones. You can wake the GreenStone by shaking it. You'll see a few lights on it go off. It's like this translucent GreenStone. You can see the links in the show notes at sovereigntech.com, which will trigger a search for other GreenStones in the area. You'd never want to stream video over this kind of network, but for something asynchronous and relatively low bandwidth like a chat room, it could work just fine. Now, Stallion here, I want to interrupt. This is really it. This is part of the reason that I don't think... how to put this? A lot of this technology just isn't for everybody, okay? Because the average person just wants to watch TV. And let's be real with each other. YouTube is just television, okay? Yeah, you get your choice, I know, okay, but it's really just another form of television. And honestly, if a technology is not directly related to a person being able to sit on their fucking ass and turn their brain off, then, I don't think it'll ever take off. It won't get mass adoption. And this is a real problem because there's so many great technologies like GreenStone and others that can do so much. But because, God damn it, they don't transmit video, I can't, upload a shot of, I don't know, you can, whatever you can't do. You can't take in some kind of media, then, well, fuck it, it's a waste of time. As to where we could be developing a lot of really interesting technologies, much like GreenStone. Okay? And you can read the rest of the article. I want to talk about this a little bit more. So, but because I think this kind of thing is a really, really interesting idea of just wearing a device. I mean, this is something that could probably be, built into watches, not Android Wear or the fucking Apple Watch. Okay. But could be built into devices where you could have, as a community, or, even on a larger scale, if one really wanted to do that, you could have the ability to interconnect with each other. I mean, just these devices bouncing all over the place. And I think there's so many possibilities with this that are just really, really exciting. And it worked pretty well, as far as I understand. It worked decently well at South by Southwest, this GreenStone. So I would love to see open implementations of this. And fucking YouTube be damned. Okay. Really, fuck it, man. Who cares? Okay. I'm sure an episode, like a 16K episode of Sovryn Tech could probably get transmitted over this with some degree of decent speed or whatever. But, let's get past that. Let's look at, communications are so important. And it's the one thing that the NSA was like really, really key on making sure that they had a back door into. So I think it's really key that is the first area that activists, that people that are concerned about their privacy, that people that want to, build a better life for themselves takes control over, is communications. Okay. Now, I don't know if VoIP would necessarily work over this. Maybe better technologies will come, with time. This is like a pocket P-cell. We've talked about P-cell in Sovryn Tech before. Okay. Where you can just put up this little device and you get this insane connection speed, that works with MIMO. I mean, it's incredible what it does. Okay. And this is the pocket version of that. And I think this deserves so much support, so much development. I'm really, really excited by this sort of thing. Okay. And I think that, and it needs to, from the very beginning of the development of technologies, mesh networking and things like GreenStone, very, very quickly, you've got to make it so that, where these signals bounce off from are either A, not attached to a person's real identity, or B, is somehow mixed. To where you don't, to where if you did because I'm sure somebody would figure out how to trace where these signals bounced around to, right? That's what's going on with Bitcoin right now, is everybody's freaking out that Coinbase and BitPay and others, maybe, maybe not even those companies, but there are companies that are tracking every transaction that happens on the blockchain. They're mapping the whole blockchain. I could see the potential for people to map greenstones, and even if you had an anonymous or a pseudonymous identity and you're communicating with people, that they could track where that communication came from. So I think it's really important. Let's do the hardware proof of concept like GreenStone is, but it's really important that from the get-go, it starts getting developed at the cost. If it keeps people from never being able to watch videos over this fucking shit, good. Okay. I really don't care. If it keeps let's work on making sure that this technology doesn't allow for some kind of geolocation, or not just, or maybe you want it to do geolocation, but have it to where it's not identifiable. It's not traceable, perhaps, to a person. Don't let it get attached to a real ID is my point. Okay. But this is awesome technology, really exciting. This is the kind of thing, we talk about all the time, how people are so concentrated on apps and, and the software side of things. And I think there's something to that. I've mentioned it, that maybe we could just build software that'll just make the hardware, a moot point, but it's still so exciting to see hardware come out of nowhere that does really cool stuff. I mean, again, this was worn as a necklace, essentially. I mean, and there's room to improve. There's no doubt there. Okay. But this offers some real opportunities. And I love it, that it's happening. This is exciting technology. Okay. And yeah, I know. Oh my God, but I can't watch YouTube. I can't watch Netflix. Oh my God. We got to get the government involved. Net neutrality, blah, because isn't that what it's all about? I don't care. I'll take it, to where it just allows me to text people. Honestly, there is nothing straight up. There is nothing on YouTube. There is nothing on Netflix. There's nothing on any porn website that can compare to honestly, to the cyber sex I could have through a decent chat app, let me tell you, because the mind runs wild, baby. I mean, the things in my head, you couldn't, I don't even think you could make an anime of it. But anyway, GreenStone, I'm excited. I love it. I hope, people look into this. Let Open Garden know, hey, really excited that you're doing this. We got to support, share it around, let people know that this stuff exists, because this is great technology. It's taking communications away from the phone companies, from the ISPs, from you take your pick. And that's a good thing. I'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech.
Hypercronius is coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. If you'll excuse me. You're not Natalia. Who are you?
Oh, hello, Mr. Sovryn. Natalia is on another mission. I'm Elizabeth. I'm here to debrief you.
I'd love for you to debrief me, but how did you get in my room?
The bellboy let me in.
Well, hooray for the bellboy.
Tech Roulette.
It is time for Tech Roulette, where I cover stories that get sent in to me through the various channels available. Of course, there's BitMessage, there's Telegram, at Sovryn. The BitMessage address is in the show notes. Actually, I should add the Telegram address in the show notes, too. I don't think it's there. There's Proton Mail, which is anarchy at protonmail.ch. And, of course, the email address for the show, brian@zomiaofflinegames.com. And there's always Twitter. There's also Google Plus, where some people have gotten in touch with me through. I still have that available, largely due to, Hangouts. It's kind of part and parcel of it. But also you have, a lot of options. Anyway, that's the bottom line is there's plenty of options. And you can find for brian@zomiaofflinegames.com. If you want to send me an encrypted email, PGP, my key is on the MIT server to find it. I used to put it in the show notes, but then whatever, SoundCloud made a change, unfortunately, that didn't allow for that to be so anymore. Where there's like a character limit of what can be in the show notes, so I couldn't put it in there. But believe me, my PGP key is out there. Just look for brian@zomiaofflinegames.com and you'll find it. So plenty of ways to get in touch with the show. And actually, this is from a listener, also a good friend, who had requested that perhaps I could talk about this on Sovryn Tech. And I love to talk about this subject. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I definitely want to. This article has some length, and I'll cut through some of it. But there's definitely a lot to explore here and a lot to say, because Sovryn Tech is a show about science and technology, not just technology, but science and technology and how they can help set you free. And, one of the easy ways, if we had it, I've always said, of how to get some freedom is, boy, if we just could all have our own goddamn starship, right? Like in Eric Frank Russell's book, The Big Explosion. Couldn't we all just go inhabit our own planet? Or could we live like the Culture series and Ian Banks's books where, people live in just these, gorgeous starships or whatever? You take your pick. And that would be great. So the notion of going out into space is a very interesting one. And something that, I talk about often, though, and I imagine this is the reason that I was wanted to discuss this, is that I don't believe that there's a whole lot of complex, intelligent life in the universe. I think that what it took for humans to come into existence is so mathematically crazy that the notion that happens often, even in something the size of the universe, I find to be a little hard to believe. And so what some people often bring up, and I often bring up, is the Fermi paradox, which is the notion that this is a response to the Drake equation, which the Drake equation by Francis Drake says that, there's, by the math, with the amount of habitable planets out there, there's just life teeming fucking everywhere. And the Fermi paradox says, okay, if that's true, why aren't we getting any signals of it? Why aren't we getting any radio signals? Etc. And it's a good point to bring up. And I think that, I think there's something to it, and I kind of stick by it. So, but this article that we have here from Aeon brings up a really interesting point by Paul Gilster here. And that is, the article is called Distant Ruins. Scientists used to scan the skies for messages from alien civilizations. Now they go looking for their ruins. So I'll read on here. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair, says Ozymandias's ruined statue in the desert of Shelley's imagination. Shelley's sonnet is often interpreted as a sober warning that human works are fleeting. But when I read it as a young boy, it kindled a sense of adventure. It suggested a wonderfully mysterious past beneath my familiar suburban surroundings. As a child, I was obsessed with archaeology, the attempt to understand the past through enigmatic remains. Boy, Stallion here, I can really relate to that. I have always been interested in archaeology. But going on, I spent many afternoons digging up dark patches of Midwestern soil as I searched the region's dense forests for artifacts of the Mississippian Indian cultures. I never found a lost city, but I occasionally turned up an arrowhead that would set me speculating about its owner and how it was lost. Through archaeology, I came to see landscapes as temporary surfaces that concealed a deep history. The world became rich with hidden texts. Boyhood obsessions often linger into adulthood. Boy, that's the truth. Even if they aren't immediately recognizable. These days, I find myself looking up into the Milky Way's majestic thread, wondering if its stars play host to monuments as haunting as those found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. The natural sciences tell us that time is deep and that civilizations could have arisen well before the Earth formed. Today, a small group of interstellar archaeologists is looking for evidence of those civilizations. They are tantalized by the possibility that the universe is not just a birthplace of alien cultures, but also their necropolis. We use the word archaeology to describe this effort because looking into deep space takes us deep into the past. The photons that strike our telescope's detectors take time to reach us. The light of Alpha Centauri, the nearest stellar system, is 4.3 years old when it arrives. It travels at 300,000 kilometers per second, but has to cross 40 trillion kilometers to get here. Dig gradually into the soil, and you push through layers accreted by wind, rain, construction, and flood. Dig deep into the sky, beyond local stars such as Alpha Centauri, and you push the clock back with some inexorability. Epsilon Eridani, another nearby star, is seen as it was over 10 years ago when it gets to Earth. Light from the fascinating Gliese 667c, a red dwarf with 3 planets in its habitable zone, take 22 years to make the journey. In the cosmic scheme of things, these are trivial distances. Our green and blue world circles its star some 27,000 light-years from the galactic center. The glow we see at the Milky Way's core began its voyage towards us at a time when prehistoric hunters were chasing mammoths because across Europe's ice sheets. The galaxy itself spans 100,000 light-years, and its nearest equivalent, the Great Disk of Andromeda, is 2.5 million light-years away. We see it as it looked when humanity's ancestors walked the African savanna. When interstellar archaeologists tilt their telescopes to the sky, they are gazing into the deep history of the cosmos, but to find a civilization more advanced than ours, they have to tilt their imaginations into the future. They have to plot out a plausible destiny for humanity and then go looking for it in the cosmic past. Conventional archaeology has shown us how difficult it is to make guesses about civilizations across time. In the late 19th century, the excavation of Hisarlik, the site in Turkey now thought to be the location of ancient Troy, soared into the European imagination through the work of Heinrich Schliemann. Legend has it that the wealthy amateur sent a cable that prematurely proclaimed, "I have looked upon the face of Agamemnon." It is not clear that he actually used those words, but we do know Schliemann's work enchanted the salons of Europe, a continent that was besotted with mysteries of a deeply romanticized past. But Schliemann was hardly a professional scientist. He had made his fortune as an indigo merchant, export agent, and commodity speculator before succumbing to a growing passion for all things Mycenaean. Though when he got to Hisarlik, he and his team unwittingly dug straight through the layer now thought to have been Homer's Troy, compromising much of that stratum for later investigation while uncovering decorative objects from between 300 and 500 years earlier, objects that Schliemann's wife, a Helen in the Victorian fashion, wore when out on the town. If we can so easily misinterpret our own past, how might we misconstrue the artifacts of a truly alien culture? One can only wonder if a modern-day Schliemann, armed with a telescope or radio dish and freighted with myriad assumptions might not blunder away an equally enigmatic interstellar find. Interstellar archaeologists are looking for evidence of engineering on scales that dwarf our own. They assume that civilizations eventually build technologies capable of exploiting the energy resources of entire stars. They are building on the early work of the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev, who in 1964 set about categorizing these futuristic civilizations. His scheme, called the Kardashev scale, has 3 types, and so far humanity does not even rate as a type 1. A civilization that can master the energy of resources of its entire planet. A type 2 culture can tap all the resources of its local star, and a type 3 can harness the energy of an entire galaxy. We do not, of course, know if any civilization other than our own exists, but Kardashev's scale offers us a way of approaching the problem of detection. It gets us thinking about what kind of traces these advanced civilizations might leave behind. Imagining the engineering of ancient extraterrestrials is difficult work, foolhardy even. The earliest attempts to do it tended to focus on the largest conceivable structures. The former Fermilab scientist Richard Kerrigan, one of interstellar archaeology's pioneers, has long been a vocal proponent of the hunt for Dyson spheres, a technology proposed by Freeman Dyson in 1960. Dyson predicted that energy-seeking civilizations would surround their home stars in a technological shell, or a swarm of spacecraft, in order to capture its energy. A sphere with the radius of Earth's orbit would have an interior surface area 100 million times as large as the surface area of our planet. In 1966, Carl Sagan suggested that such spheres might be detectable, but he cautioned that they would be hard to distinguish from natural objects that give off a similar infrared signature. Decades later, Kerrigan would tell new scientists that he wanted to try anyway, that he wanted to get into the mode of the British Museum, to go and look for artifacts. So I want to cut in here quick. A Dyson sphere, if you want to get a concept of what that looks like, there's actually an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation called Relics in the 6th season. It's the episode where Scotty from the original series comes back. And in that, there is a Dyson sphere, and you see, kind of a hypothetical of what that looks like. But the interesting point is that even for science fiction writers, like the ones for Star Trek, even the Federation didn't have a Dyson sphere. Pretty advanced stuff. Reading on here. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. This is a really long article, but you can read it. Go to sovereigntech.com. Link is in the show notes. There's a bit.ly link, and you can click on that. Okay. But I want to, with as far as that search that Kerrigan is going through, he has started that search, and they are already looking at various interesting prospects. Okay. But admittedly, they are running into the issue of false positives, right? That's the same thing that's going on with the search for actual planets that fit within Goldilocks zone, like was mentioned earlier in this article, where they're finding out that some of those weren't actually planets. We've talked about that on Sovereign Tech in the past, but let me read on here. None of the ongoing interstellar archaeology searches will be easy to confirm. Supposing they find something notable for natural explanations for such phenomena abound. For one, spiral galaxies already contain voids that can mimic a civilization's spread. The galaxy Virgo HI21 is a good example. At optical wavelengths, it's dark enough to suggest it might be a candidate for Dyson-style engineering. But HI21 is also explained through the effects of so-called tidal shredding, a natural process that may be producing the same signature. Dyson sphere signatures are trickier still. They could be nothing more than stars enshrouded in dust clouds. Positive results turned up by interstellar archaeologists will need plenty of scrutiny. The field's deeper thinkers are starting to wonder if there might be other ways to search. There was Milan Sirkovic. He says we ought to look for something like the huge space colonies once championed by Gerard O'Neill, structures that could be involved in large-scale industrial operations, which might be furnaces for antimatter. If so, their existence could be confirmed by the detection of unusual gamma-ray signatures. Alien engineers might even manipulate their own central star. In 1957, Fritz Zwicky suggested that civilizations could fire fuel pellets into their local stars to move their solar systems to new locations, especially when interstellar dangers loomed. 40 years later, the physicist Leonid Shtokdorf suggested that huge spherical mirrors could be built to accomplish the same thing by creating a feedback effect from the star's radiation. That would let its creators control the star's trajectory through the galaxy. So, and I'm going to skip ahead here. They talk about what are known as blue stragglers, which are stars that some people think, which it's an interesting notion that the idea of propelling, like that notion of firing, fuel pellets into the sun. And that's just it. The idea would be is that if we wanted to move our entire solar system, we would kind of put thrusters, we would sort of launch like a missile essentially at the sun, and that would cause an emission of thrust from the sun that will push it. And the sun's gravity will just take the whole solar system with it. Okay. It's an interesting concept. I don't know at what speed that all of that would occur, but that's really fascinating stuff. But some people think that a lot of these blue stragglers that are found around could be a product of that, or that the blue stragglers, because these blue stragglers are these really oddballs of stars because they appear so young, yet they seem to have formed so old. And so some people will also theorize that these blue stragglers are actually an advanced civilization's attempt at lengthening the life of their sun, of their central star. Kind of reigniting it, kind of if you've ever seen the movie Sunshine, that sort of idea. So some people think that that's why these anomalies, as far as stars go, that these blue stragglers are. So there's a lot. It's a beautiful article to read. There's a whole lot there, but I want to go ahead and break into it with some commentary. I am open to all of this. It's one of those things that I think shocks people because I'm so into science fiction, so into science, so into technology. I think it really does shock people when I say, look, because this is something a lot of Christians say, and of course, I am the farthest thing from a Christian that there could be, that there's not a whole lot of complex life in the universe. I don't think so. I think it takes so much for humans to finally be what they are. And I know it's been billions of years, if not eternity. Would it have happened? Maybe. Maybe that opens it up. There's been recent research, which I'm very intrigued by, out of Canada, out of universities in Canada, stating that the universe had no beginning. And I think that solves a whole lot of problems when you consider that. Okay. And due to that, then does that open up the fact that there could be very, very ancient civilizations? Certainly it opens up to that. Could there be, could a Dyson sphere, like they talked about in this, could it hide the radio transmissions that we've been looking for with SETI and all these other, extraterrestrial search programs have been looking for? Might it hide all that? Yes, totally open to that. That's entirely possible, and it's something to consider. But I think the beautiful thing that this article is really bringing up is that we are dealing with, if we are searching for extraterrestrials, if we are searching for other life, I'm open to the fact that there's other life out there. I'm not open to the fact that it's visited Earth. Okay. Or at least it's highly unlikely that occurred. If that's out there, we have to understand that this is alien. They probably think in completely different ways than humans do. And would they even want to come up with a Dyson sphere? Would they even want to advance? Would they perhaps go through a process of rewilding? There's so many possibilities of why that we're not receiving signals from life, from extraterrestrial life. I understand that and very, very open to that. And this article brings up a lot of these ideas. And in the notion that really I hadn't even necessarily considered, admittedly, was that maybe we're looking for the wrong thing. But that's just it. How are we going to know, how are we going to know what to look for? There's, Constantine, or not Constantine, it was Christian Huygens, Constantine Huygens' son, Christian Huygens, who was, a famous astronomer and scientist a few hundred years ago. He had talked about the notion of finding extraterrestrial life. And he said that he said a lot of this. He said it could be so wildly different from anything we understand. But then he goes on to say, when you read Christian Huygens' books, he goes on to say that, but they're probably not that different. So that's something to consider as well. And he makes his case as to why he doesn't think so. And of course, he goes into, the efficiency of the human body and things like that. And of course, he's using a lot of, perhaps, 16th, 17th century science to explore that idea. So maybe he's dead wrong. Okay. I'm open to that, but it's really something to consider. The level of technology that perhaps races, if they exist, far older than our own, that they achieved. But here's the thing I want to leave you with. is that what if, and believe me, I love space exploration, but what if a civilization, an alien culture got so advanced that it realized what could possibly be outside of their planet that wasn't already right in front of them that they could want? What if they chose a simpler life? What if they realized that the ability to just connect with other people was just so powerful, and to be able to do it in such an authentic way, because perhaps they didn't just, advance technologically, but maybe psychologically they advanced too. And that the level of connection that you can reach with other living beings on their own home was just so powerful that they wanted to stick with that. What if that? This article doesn't go into that. A lot of people don't do that. They say, well, savages, they're behind, they didn't get technologically advanced, but that's a choice. You can choose to not be that way. And maybe all of these alien civilizations made that choice. And that's why we have yet to hear, if ever, anything from them. Something to ponder. But either way, humans seem to be explorers, and so I'm sure someday we'll find out. I'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech.
Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
When it comes to how often men masturbate, it doesn't vary that much. You can safely predict that most young men who aren't having sex with a partner will masturbate from a couple of times a week to a couple of times a day. Well, there's no such certainty when it comes to how often women masturbate. There's also little correlation between how often a woman masturbates and how much she likes sex. One woman who loves having sex with a partner might only masturbate once or twice a month, if ever. For another, it might be once or twice a week, and a third woman might masturbate once or twice a day. Some women will go through stages where they'll go for weeks or months without masturbating, and then there will be times when they'll masturbate more frequently. And it's possible that for some women, the hormone changes related to their menstrual cycle might make them more likely to masturbate during certain times of the month. Also, some women masturbate more when they're in a relationship rather than less, because they're more turned on in general. So I wouldn't assume that if your female partner's masturbating, it's because she's not being satisfied. Maybe she isn't, but maybe she is and then some. As for why women masturbate, it's for pretty much the same reasons as men. Because they're feeling horny or physically aroused, or as a way of relaxing, especially at night when they're trying to fall asleep.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
I just received an encrypted message from Decentral with your next mission, and it looks like I'm coming along.
Why, Elizabeth, I wouldn't have it any other way. You're clearly good at staying on top of things.
It helps when one's partner is very skilled.
No, we can have more fun later. What does the message say?
Important messages.
It is time for Important Messages, where I cover the messages that get sent in to me through the various channels available. Of course, I listed them off earlier. Brian@zomiofflinegames.com is the email address. There's Twitter. In fact, great guy on Twitter, and actually there's even an Instagram too. All of that can be found on the left-hand side of sovryntech.com. And if it's not on the left-hand side of sovryntech.com, which I have a new website coming up, I'll talk about that in a second. But also in the show notes, there's a lot of options as well, including donation addresses. If you like what Sovryn Tech does, if you like the news that I'm delivering, and perhaps what I want to say, believe me, your donations help out immensely. You have no idea. Okay, I know people say that, but really, it helps out a lot. Okay, and there's Bitcoin, NXT, a lot of options there for you to donate to the show. And of course, there's PayPal. I got a very generous PayPal donation last week. I am incredibly thankful for that. Thank you so much. And there's the Amazon link as well. And I want to touch on that real quick. We talked about Amazon earlier, and someone asked, I think it was on Google Plus, they said, hey, are you going to, with Amazon, because Amazon's doing some other things too, to where if you leave if you become unemployed with Amazon, I think you have to give like, I don't know, it's like 18 weeks. It's some crazy amount of time that you can't go and work for a competitor or something like that. If you leave, it's terrible. And I totally agree. I mean, I've made the case for a year now, over a year, about how Amazon is really a heinous company. And, you know, should I stop, should I let my principal speak up and should I stop using Amazon? I've been asked about that, and I'm chewing on that right now. And that's the best I can tell you is that I'm chewing on that. It's always that tough thing of, well, your principals also are against war. Should you be paying your taxes, things like that, whatever. This is something I'm very seriously chewing on because I think Amazon is really doing some really ugly shit, okay, to their own employees and let alone what their designs, I think, for society at large. I think it's a real problem. And, and just like I choose not to use a lot of Google services, should my money, should my money be where my mouth is with Amazon? Well, that's something we'll explore. Anyway, I was going to say with Twitter, there's a guy on Twitter, really great guy. And we've actually been exploring recently a lot of like these really low run, meaning only a few episodes, shows from like the 80s and 90s and even the 70s. At some point I need to do like a special about all those. Those are a great time. I love it when he brings it up. He brought a couple up that I hadn't even heard of, that I just thought were, I checked them out and I'm like, these are fantastic. Whiz Kids or some others. So thank you so much for that. He also sometimes will get in touch with me through Instagram about it. So anyway, let's read. We've got a bunch of emails to get through here that I want to get to. So why don't I start off with something from the email box? And again, I do keep you anonymous unless you want me to specifically mention you. This is from Zomi Offline Games here. I was talking with a guy in the Sovryn Balnea, which that is, I have an IRC channel. I'm not frequenting it much right now because I'm so busy developing and working on a new website and all that, that I really haven't had the chance. But I do have an IRC channel on Freenode. Again, that's in the show notes. It's just underneath the donation addresses and all that. And it's hashtag Sovryn Balnea. That's the name of the room on Freenode. That could not get the show through SoundCloud. So this person couldn't get Sovereign Tech through SoundCloud. And they were looking for direct download links. SoundCloud has always been super buggy for me, but I have been able to make it work. Any plans to get download links or torrent archives? I am totally open to torrents. In fact, I've wanted to set up a torrent for like the first 100 episodes and then maybe do it in bits of 25 after that. That is something I will work on. So absolutely, I want to make that. As far as download links, one of the things I will be doing on the new website for sovereigntech.com, and of course, it's also the website for Zomi Offline Games and all my other projects, and it'll be a blog as well. One of the things there will be, I will offer 16. I've talked about this for a while, but I will be offering 16 kilobit episodes of Sovereign Tech, and they will be available to download directly from the website. So that those will be options, as compared to SoundCloud. If you're looking for something else, I'll look into possibly having higher bitrate episodes available, but by and large, I want to leave that to SoundCloud for bandwidth and all that. I mean, it could get kind of crazy. So anyway, he ends it off with IRC lives on, free Enoch 2015. Thanks as always. And no, thanks to you for the email. So hopefully that covered that. Let's get into, let's see, this is in response to last week's episode where I read the new Hacker Manifesto from 2600, which again, maybe I can, when I have a full website, maybe I can make that available on the website. But right now I haven't seen it anywhere online. It was only put into 2600 magazine, at least at the moment. So anyway, reading the bit message here is from Bitmessage. I enjoyed your latest podcast as usual. I noticed a new Hacker Manifesto mentioned somewhere recently, and I just skipped by it with the intention of getting around to it eventually. Honestly, I was expecting something I wouldn't find very valuable for some reason, and now that I've heard it, I'm happy that my instincts were wrong on that one. The notion that any competent person out there is an asset has me doubting the projects I am desperately awaiting, such as MadeSafe, ZeroCoin or ZeroCash, FreedomBox, or the MeshNet satellite efforts. As thrilled as I am to be aware of them, sometimes I wish we'd only learn about such things after they've been achieved. I realize that most of them are huge group efforts, but it makes me doubt that they'll ever be realized. If they're not, perhaps we should all take the advice in the new Hacker Manifesto to heart and limit the exposure of any future project as much as possible. As you're always telling everyone, we can't and shouldn't wait for technology to grant us freedom. But I'm still very hopeful for some of these projects, even if part of me feels there's no reason why they'd be allowed to come to fruition. Take care. So, great message, great thoughts, to consider. The new Hacker Manifesto that I read last week, you can look for episode 117, I think. It's during Hacksec. And the guy raised the point that pretty much everybody, particularly in Silicon Valley, everybody's an asset. And, the only real hackers left are people that are complete individuals working on their own, essentially. And, it had a very dire view, some of which I agreed with, not all, but some of which I agreed with. And I understand this. And, what I want, will these things come to be? It's interesting. Bitcoin, we consider Bitcoin that actually, that came out of nowhere. It was devved kind of openly, but it wasn't something that was getting VC funding, at least at first. It wasn't something that, it was just something that got built and figured out and worked on by a very small team and whatever. And it was pretty hush-hush. It was happening underneath. And I think this is an important thing, is that a lot of, I'm excited about Zero Cash. I'm excited about MadeSafe and whatever. But a lot of these projects, okay, are going to come out of the garages. You don't even know they're happening. The most exciting stuff on the planet, I guarantee you, nobody knows about. Okay. In fact, one time I was on a podcast and I got asked, hey, could you tell, you talk about System D all the time, which I do. System D is the alternative economy, the parallel society, right? It's like, what other things are happening in System D that maybe people don't know about? And I said, if I told you, it wouldn't be System D, would it? Not that I was hiding anything per se. Okay. But just that a lot of this stuff that's really going on, that's really exciting. No, not a whole lot of people know about it. It's all under the radar. Nobody was reporting about it, and good. Because honestly, so much of the things that get reported about, how much, you read so many news stories. I mean, your Facebook feed or whatever else is loaded with stories, all these new technological developments, and how much of it actually does anything for you in the end. Or even a lot of these scientific discoveries. I mean, there's nothing coming out of it, it seems. We're not going to the hospital right now. Everybody's talking about 3D printing, organic material and 3D printing ears and arms and all this stuff, but nobody's going to the hospital and say, it's like, yeah, all right, just 3D print me that arm and, and put it on there. It seems like it's taking forever for a lot of this stuff to come out. And, why is that? Those are great things to consider, and to wonder about. I think it's important that, to keep in mind, when it says, we can't and shouldn't wait for technology to grant us freedom. Absolutely, we shouldn't. But it's important to realize that there's a lot of technologies that are out there. Yes, they're not popular and they can't make anybody money. So nobody wants to use it. Okay. And nobody wants to talk about it except for maybe sovereign tech. There's a lot of technologies out there that can achieve so much of what a lot of people are promising right now. So that's one thing to consider. You can use things like Usenet, news groups. You can use things like IRC, like last emailer mentioned there. There's a lot of these technologies that can achieve much of what so many other people are really promising. There's RetroShare. There's, a whole slew of technologies that already exist. As far as good hardware, there's, what is it? Think Linux, I think is the website, where you can get, routers that already, have your privacy in mind and you can take total control of. There's the Libreboot X200, which is the greatest computer on the planet right now. There's a link in the show notes. I'll leave it there permanently, so that people can get interested in buying it. There's so much of this that's really already available. But the other point I want to bring to you is that since the Snowden revelations, since so many of these things have come out, the egregiousness and the awareness has been raised in people's consciousness about, what's happening in the world, the evil that governments are doing, the evil that a lot of the, tech giants are doing, all this stuff. There are genuine companies that are there are people that are, entrenched, as it were, that are really wanting to have, privacy minded, security minded technology and all that aren't even anarchists. And so they will develop this stuff, they'll develop the right thing, perhaps for even the wrong reasons, or not the most, not the most virtuous of reasons, perhaps. Okay, so I think that's something to consider too, as far as that goes. So it's still okay to get excited about some of these technologies. Maybe some of them, maybe they never will come to fruition. That's entirely possible. Particularly, in fact, a great point, I think, is zero cash. I said this before because I've had people tell me, Brian, people are well aware that Bitcoin needs better security and privacy. Well, Zerocoin was being developed years ago. Why weren't those teams talking to each other? As I understand it, it's because, like I said in a couple episodes ago, the Bitcoin development team said, get out of here. We don't need this. We don't want this. So that kind of lends to the notion that, hey, who's working for who and who wants what? Kind of sounded like Ernie Hancock there. Anyway. So great points to bring up, but don't be so, we don't have to be so dire on all of this because the things are happening. I know we don't hear about them. Okay. But things are taking place and incredible technologies are being developed out of nowhere. We talked about GreenStone earlier. That came out of fucking nowhere. And somebody just suddenly said, hey, see this necklace I'm wearing at South by Southwest? Guess what? This is a mesh network. I mean, I would have just if I was standing there, I would have just fell over. So these things, a lot of the really, earth-shattering things are very, very quiet. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Okay. I mean, my point, in highlighting a lot of the crap that a lot of these companies that everybody just think, oh, they're just making everything so hunky-dory, like Google and Apple and Amazon and others, is to highlight why we need something else. But just trust me, those something else's are getting developed all around the world in solder-filled garages, and even some things that would equate to companies. I mean, there's the exponential fact that now one person really could, a singular person, one person could develop the quote unquote Google killer, the Google search killer. Okay. I talk about DuckDuckGo. It's only 20 people. Talk about a lot of these companies. It's only, Instagram, most popular social network on the planet. It was developed by 2 guys. Okay. So we have exponential growth in the ability to develop. That's a fact. That's not going away. And because of that, people with really good, they've got it all together in their head could really make game changers that nobody will know about. And then it'll just come and happen, which I know the emailer you recognize, or the bit messenger, you recognize that. And you mentioned that, but let's keep that in mind. Okay. So like Francis Bacon, every action has an equal or greater reaction, right? Well, the reaction to the lack of privacy is coming. In many ways, it's already happening. So I want to read let's see, we got an email here. Okay. Hello, Brian. Loving the show as always. I recently acquired a copy of the 2nd edition of NVC, that's Nonviolent Communication, for those that don't know, by Marshall Rosenberg. This is something, just butting in here on the email. I talk about NVC a lot. We talk about the evolution of language. This is a real evolution of language, not changing the definitions of things, but NVC is a genuine way, to evolve the language to where we express our needs and perhaps, get rid of misunderstandings and blame and shame in a lot of these, issues that are a real plague on society. So far, I'm on page 10 and I'm already seeing how much utility this method can provide in quote unquote raising kids. I never expected a book to be of much assistance when it comes to raising kids. And he's using that term just as the conventionalism. Between seeing my parents' attempt at raising myself and my siblings and the way my friends' parents attempted to raise them, I lost faith in the ability of authors to be able to assist in such a ridiculous circumstance of raising a suburban nuclear family. Admittedly, this book is suggesting a process very similar to my own attempted parenting style, but why should I have to reinvent the wheel when Rosenberg's publisher can sell me one for $10? I have resisted researching NVC for quite some time, primarily because it sounded like lefty hippie cult stuff. Also, coming from the perspective of a philosopher, I figured language to be a tool of communicating concepts and ideas far more than a method of sharing feelings and stuff. That was just a side benefit to the ability to communicate more useful things. Over the last few years, as I've made the final steps in my journey to anarchy, I've become a lot less cynical about emotions and their mere usefulness in rhetoric. I think NVC may be the nail in the coffin for that sort of cynicism. Interestingly enough, it was a combination of Sovryn Tech and Chris Cantwell's Some Garbage podcast that challenged me to at least read the book before rejecting it as some sort of hippie culty stuff. I'm glad I'm giving it a chance. Thank you. Okay. For those, I don't want to plug Chris Cantwell much, really, just because I completely disagree with a lot of what he has to say, and his work is.
How did Chris Cantwell help him get into NBC?
I'm curious about that. Yeah. The only thing I'm guessing is that Chris Cantwell complained about it and said, this is the leftist agenda and anarchy and all this stuff. And, I could really picture that. But hey, this just proves that what you resist persists, right? So, I'm glad you're enjoying NVC. I think it's very helpful. I've rarely heard the person that actually gave it a shot, that actually gave it a chance, say that it wasn't helpful, to them. So, boy, Chris Cantwell. Anyway. Woo! Talk about diametrically opposed. All right. But thank you so much. I'm glad that whatever happened inspired you to check out NVC. That's wonderful. A little update last week, because I had people ask me, hey, could you talk about Darkcoin? I kind of wish I waited for this week, because guess what? There's no more Darkcoin. Now it's called Dash. I don't get it. But anyway, it really lends to a lot of what I've been saying, where a lot of the marketing and a lot of the goals and a lot of the ideas, the underpinnings, not necessarily even the code, but the underpinnings of the attitude of Darkcoin just seem to shift. It shifts like an earthquake. It's so crazy. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in Darkcoin. But if you didn't know that, there is no more Darkcoin. Now it's Dash. I don't know if it's Dashcoin or what, but anyway, there it is. So something, I did get emails, people asking me to talk about zero tasking, which is what I kind of nicknamed my, my meditation style. I'll probably get into that. I'll save that for next week. I was going to talk about it this week, but running short on time for the segment, and there's other things that I want to get into. So I'll talk about zero tasking next week. Maybe I'll have a guest on the show that can talk about it with me. Something I got that came my way was woolly mammoths making a comeback. And actually, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy was the one that brought this to my attention. She's here. Well, if you want to see a trunk. She was making some hand motions. Anyway, woolly mammoths, yes. Apparently what is happening is that scientists are taking, mammoth cells and hybridizing them with elephant cells. That's a very simple way of explaining it. And their initial plan is just to create an elephant, and they're going to do this in an artificial embryo. They're going to create an elephant that can handle colder temperatures to allow elephants to live on from human poaching. Apparently, that's sort of the idea. But then a few generations down the line of development, not of the elephant itself, this new cold, hardy elephant, they do plan on potentially bringing back the woolly mammoth. Now, a lot of people, this is something that comes up on Sovryn Tech a lot, is, messing with nature and messing with biodiversity and all of that. I think a lot of people might be shocked by my answer to this. I actually fully support bringing back the woolly mammoth. For a few reasons. Now, there's some suppositions on my part. One of them is that now you have to understand, I think a lot of people consider, when they think about the woolly mammoth, they think that it's something that lived with the dinosaurs, which to some degree may have. Okay, not exactly, but anyway, it's been around for a long time. But most people don't realize that the woolly mammoths didn't die off until just about 4,000 years ago. I mean, it was a smaller population, no doubt, but just 4,000 years ago. But they kind of moved around. They ended up on St. Paul's Island. There's some various areas. So it would seem that they were chased away from where they were. And so, and elephants, woolly mammoth included, I'm assuming, are incredibly intelligent creatures, very, very intelligent. Much of what I attribute to dolphins and some other few species out there, I wonder just how intelligent they are. They could be incredibly intelligent. They suffer from PTSD. They definitely have long-term memory. There's a lot of things that go well beyond instincts in elephants. So it's an intriguing thing to study. So with woolly mammoths, anyway, I wonder if they were being, again, we're talking 4,000 years ago, if the spread of human civilization is what led to them being wiped out, and that it wasn't some other natural force. You know, it wasn't just like a lack of an ice age or whatever, because 4,000 years, I mean, that's a pretty short time away in the grand scheme of history. So if that's the case, certainly I have no problem with them coming back, because it wasn't like that they were wiped out by, some disease or something like that. So that, that's something to consider. But the other point that I want to bring to you is that normally, yes, I'm very concerned. I've talked about like Neanderthal man and would bringing them back be a problem? That one, I'm a little concerned about bringing back Neanderthals, okay? Because what exactly ended in, why did they become extinct? What was the deal behind that? As well as the biodiversity of the planet is significantly different from the time of Neanderthal, okay, I think. But 4,000 years ago, this is my point, 4,000 years ago, in terms of evolution and even of ecological development, is an incredibly short period of time. I mean, that's a stone's throw of time. And so to have, there's a little pun there, to bring back a creature that's only been gone for 4,000 years, I don't think that that's outlandish. I don't think that that creates a problem for other species around, especially a species that is so like ones that are presently here. Okay, so I don't see an issue with that. By any means. And, keep in mind that a lot of what, perhaps, a lot of what the woolly mammoth ate, things of that nature could very well, because I think the woolly mammoth, it's been around for so long, or it had been around for so long. I think it falls into a similar category like the coelacanth, which is this fish that hasn't changed in millions of years, if not billion. Millions anyway. It hasn't changed in millions of years. And the reason is that its genes actually allow, its genetic evolution is incredibly slow. Okay, it's not because God made the earth 6,000 years ago. It's because its genetic evolution is incredibly slow. And I would argue that it would seem to be the same for the woolly mammoth. Okay, so I don't think that the ecosystem around the world has changed that much from the time that the woolly mammoth was here. So I am open to the woolly mammoth coming back, at the moment, maybe there'll be some more evidence. It's certainly something that deserves a ton of discussion before we start bringing back, extinct species. Okay. But if it died the same reason that the dodo bird died, because of, ships and, human expansion, well, what the hell? Bring it back.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists like Barack Obama and Al Gore taking credit for the web while trying to take over the web? Are you disgusted by experts whose concept of the internet is that it's a series of tubes? Take back the free market of computing by encouraging software developers to adopt the BIPCOT No-Gov license. The BIPCOT No-Gov license allows any use or modification except by governments. Go to bipcot.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Do you still have it?
Got it right here. How does this affect System D?
I don't know. The message just said it was important.
I think we need to find out more about this.
Tool of the Week.
It is time for Tool of the Week, where I cover something, a piece of software, maybe even a piece of hardware, maybe a product, whatever, a website, something that I consider useful. But before I get into this week's Tool of the Week, and I've got a good one, I just want to say two things. First, I want to make a clarification from the last segment. I want to make it very clear that the only problem I have with anyone is coercion and the use of lethal force. I don't care if they're lefty, hippie, whatever, fuck it. It doesn't matter. Okay. So, I just want to make that very clear. I know some people, like Cantwell, seem to think that they're the scum of the earth. I am no way do I share that opinion at all. The other thing I want to share with you quickly is that I have a game giveaway. I told you I'd start doing these again, and I've got a doozy this week. Sonic Generations, one of the best Sonic games, especially in recent years to come out. This is, of course, for PC through Steam. That's the way I do any of my game giveaways. But Sonic Generations, and all I want you to do to get your chance for this is email me, or, you can do it on Twitter or BitMessage, but just mention that you want Sonic Generations. And I just want to know, I want your opinion. What do you think about the overall intros, from the first intro to, that I do where, Ryan Sovryn, 21st Century Anarchist, are you tired of that? Do you like that? Also, what do you think about the kind of the spy story that runs throughout each segment? I just want your opinions on that. And then I'll do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And if you don't want the game, tell me you don't want the game. But then otherwise, those that do, I'll do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And someone out of that bunch, I will send a copy of, or the link for a copy of Sonic Generations 2. So that's what I'm interested in. I want your feedback on that, because episode 125, I'm going to be shaking things up again. And so I'm just interested in what you guys think, and gals, of course. So anyway, this week's tool of the week, let's do it. This is pretty wild. It is called Zendo. And Zendo is a messaging app. I know, oh my God, not another messaging app. Right. And this in no way, my use of Zendo would no way take the place of my, very heavy use of Telegram. And folks, God, I can't, anytime I share anything about a new feature from Telegram or whatever, I get like 20 people saying, hey, do you realize Telegram's not secure? Blah, blah, blah. Do you listen to the show? Do you not? Come on. I'm aware of the problems. I'm aware or the perceived problems or the actual problems. I know. Okay. I still recommend Telegram. Getting people used to encryption, whether it's encryption you trust or not, is a very good thing. Anyway, Zendo. This is an interesting step. And there might be caveats with it. So I'm still totally checking this out. But I love the idea. I love the notion. And the notion is it's one-time pad, okay, encryption. So that means that, the idea of the one-time pad is that you would write down on a pad, a physical pad, and you would show it to what the pad says to the person, and then you'd light it on fire. That's the idea. It's the digital equivalent of that. Now, there's some debate whether or not it exactly does this one-time pad messaging, which is kind of a holy grail in cryptography. Okay. There's some debate on that. So, and this is still in beta. This is really, really new. So I wouldn't go trusting your life with it per se, but I want you to look into the implementation, how it's used. And I love that. In fact, one of the best parts is that the way you get each other's keys, okay, because it uses, private public keys, is you have to actually scan a QR code, much like you would do a Bitcoin transaction, of the other person's device. But the other person has to be there. So that creates the trust. That because the person in front of you is the person you're talking to, unless you believe in clones and lizard Jews and other things like that. Or shapeshifters, you're fairly certain that the person in front of you is that person. And if you believe in all those things, believe me, no app is going to help you. Okay. But regardless, I love that idea. So this is Zendo. The thing I like about it, and, I know you could do this over Skype, but then what's the point, right? If you're looking for actual security, I know you could do this over Skype to where you could scan each other's QR codes, perhaps if the picture is a high enough resolution. Or maybe you could just do that. You could take a picture of your QR code and email it to somebody or whatever. But I like the idea that it brings people together. You have to know the person there. And it creates what used to be done with PGP and actually sex in the 70s too. Key parties. It brings back the notion of key parties, which I think is something so lacking from, the activist movements, from, the anarchist movements, tech movements, whatever, take your pick, whatever fucking group you want to talk about. Key parties are so key to moving forward, with privacy and security and freedom in general, in my opinion, actually. So Zendo is something to look at. It's got a good attitude. It's doing a lot of things right. It's invented by a very small team. Okay, like we talked about how these things just come out of nowhere, like we were mentioning with that email before. This exists. And granted, you want to give it some time to test it out. But the attitude of the implementation is fantastic. So link in the show notes, you can check that out. Zendo, I'm intrigued.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
We're never going to make it out alive if those blockchain drones get off the ground.
I can handle that. You just find us another ride.
Get on!
Nice moves. When did you learn that?
On with you. No guns, no killing. Are the drones taken care of?
They are now. Nothing works better than a quick hack. Let's get going.
Hacksec.
It is time for Hacksec, where I cover issues of hackers and security. And we're going to talk apps this week, which is kind of fitting since we were just talking about Zendo. But real quick, Zendo's not the only one I know that is kind of claimed to do this one-time pad messaging. And the other one that's done that is BlackBerry Messenger Protected, which is a service you have to pay for that gets used for enterprise. And it's been around for a little while. But both of those, again, Zendo and BBM Protected, are kind of like, some people question that like the key generation is absolutely random. There's questions to be had, and they're important to ask. But I just want to make sure that I'm aware that this has been. I want to make sure you know that I'm aware this has been done before. So anyway, let's get into our story for Hacksec this week, and this comes from the Wall Street Journal of all things by Elizabeth Dwoskin. Where were you 3 minutes ago? Your apps know. And, oh boy. Dozens of smartphone apps collect so much location data that their publishers can plot users' comings and goings in detail, a forthcoming peer-reviewed study found. Computer scientists at Carnegie Mellon University concluded that a dozen or so popular Android apps collected device location, GPS coordinates accurate to within 50 meters, an average of 6,200 times, or roughly every 3 minutes per participant over a 2-week study period. The research comes at a time of increasing concern about electronic privacy. A 2014 Pew survey found that more than 90% of Americans feel they've lost control over their personal data. Golden Stallion here. Good, because you have. While savvy users understand that using mobile devices entails some privacy trade-offs, for example, a navigation app will reveal their location to the app's publisher, most don't realize the extent to which such information is collected and distributed, the researchers said. The researchers recruited 23 users of Android version 4.3 from Craigslist and the Carnegie Mellon student body. Participants were allowed to use their choice of apps after installing software that noted app requests for a variety of personal information, not only location, but also contacts, call logs, calendar entries, and camera output. They weren't told the purpose of the study and were screened to weed out people who had a technical background or strong views about privacy. The researchers found that even apps that provided useful location-based services often requested the device's location far more frequently than would be necessary to provide the service, the researchers said. The Weather Channel, for example, which is a very popular app to get weather, which provides local weather reports, requested device location an average of 2,000 times, or every 10 minutes during the study period. Groupon, which necessarily gathered location data to offer local deals, requested one participant's coordinates 1,062 times in 2 weeks. Quote, does Groupon really need to know where you are every 20 minutes? Asked Norman M. Sada, a Carnegie Mellon professor who co-authored the study. The person would have to be accessing Groupon in their sleep. End quote. Groupon and the Weather Channel did not respond to requests for comment. App publishers have ample incentive to gather as much location data as they can. Marketers pay 10% to 20% more for online ads that include location information, said Greg Stewart, chief executive of the Mobile Marketing Association. In previous research, Seda and his colleagues found that when an app requests location, 73% of the time it shares the information with an advertising network. Location data can make ads more relevant to consumers by making it possible to draw inferences about what audience members are interested in. Stewart said, the data can be used to show an ad for a store to a potential customer who is nearby, a technique that boosts store traffic 40%, according to Mobile Marketing Association research, or it can be used to present ads for store items to shoppers who are already inside. Users often aren't aware that their location played a role in being shown a particular ad, Stewart added. Among the software that handled the most location data were programs pre-installed on the device that couldn't be easily deleted. Google Play Services, which distributes information to a variety of apps, computed location on an average of 2,200 times during the study period. So that's during a 2-week period. Google declined to comment. In addition to tallying app requests for personal data, the Carnegie Mellon researchers explored a conundrum. Despite these widespread worries about information leaks, few users take actions that would plug them, such as downloading privacy software or adjusting their device's settings. The researchers sent to study participants a daily message, a privacy nudge, as Sadat called it, telling them how many times apps collected their personal data. After receiving the nudges daily, 95% of participants reported reassessing their app permissions, and 58% chose to restrict apps from collecting data. Privacy nudges no longer can be implemented on Android. Operating system updates since the study was concluded removed the software that gave the researchers access to logs of app requests for personal information. Because Google isn't evil. It's only Google plus government that's evil. Ridiculous. So let's talk about this a bit. Apparently, at one point, there was a degree of transparency on Android. As we've said multiple times on Sovryn Tech, that time for Android is gone. There is no reason. I do not believe that anybody, and I used to do this too, believe me, okay, but I do not believe that anyone can walk up to somebody with an iPhone and say, you're using an iPhone. This is open source. Android, I have control of my device. The fuck you do. No, you don't. Unless you reinstall Cyanogen, reinstall it, put Cyanogen mod on it or some other ROM, or, you go AOSP or whatever, you really don't. Okay. Google has total or if not total, they're getting more and more with each new release, balls control of that Android device. All right. So unless you're the kind of person that's into, really, again, modding your Android device, that argument is no longer valid that somehow iPhones are less secure or somehow iPhones are inferior or somehow Apple, isn't as open with you as Google is. That's all bullshit now. We knew this before. I'm just hitting it home again. So with that in mind, yes, it's a great question. Why the hell do half of these apps, the amount of times that they are checking for your location data and all that, especially shopping apps. Don't people sleep? Maybe people don't sleep anymore. Maybe people get up in the middle of the night. Oh, hell, I think I'm going to go do some shopping. I don't know. Now, all of this, the bottom line here is that all of this is just about, it's about pushing the surveillance state forward. And then it's interesting, though, what this commentary, what this has to say about society in general. I quote Julian Assange a lot, and I actually recently got quoted on a story on hacked.com where, I said, look, we're living in a surveillance society. We're living in a society where people want to be surveilled. Only 58% of people, when they were, told, hey, this might be an issue, they were told, that they actually did anything about it. Only 58%, but then 90% feel that they lost control. Well, I guess most people are just giving up. And to some degree, okay, with a smartphone in particular, as I said in this episode alone, and in many others, is that the smartphone is a lost platform. By and large, maybe Black Phone will solve that. Now, tablets, a bit of a different story. When I say smartphone, I mean iOS and Android devices are kind of a lost cause in my opinion, and I think this just hammers it home even more. Okay, as far as what to do about all this, don't put so many apps on there. I mean, that's the thing. People can know where you are within at least 50 meters, if not more. There was we talked about it briefly a couple weeks ago, I think, where a story came out that based upon the battery usage of your smartphone, and because of what apps use that battery, people could tell where you were based upon just correlating app use and battery use. I mean, these devices, it's an old joke. It's actually a decade-old joke that I remember the original story that this came from where, the guy said, don't call it a cell phone, call it a tracker. And it's true. Now, you can make the choice. Yes, I still use a smartphone. Okay. I'm very conscious of what I still do with that smartphone. I mean, you definitely don't want to make it easy for anybody. Okay. But make the choice. Think about it. How much do you care about your privacy? What business are you in? Things of that nature, and go from there, build on it. We don't necessarily have to have like this, and sometimes I fall into it, but we don't necessarily have to have this all or nothing attitude. Okay. But being aware, what's the old saying from Dune? The first step in avoiding a trap is in knowing of its existence. If you know of its existence, then you know how to react to it. Okay. And that's all I'm bringing to light here for you. I'm not saying you have to toss your smartphone out the door, but I'm saying be aware that the chances of, other than perhaps some very specific software, like on iOS, like Signal or even whatever, Telegram, if you want to go with that, that it's lost. I mean, some people will say even with Signal or Telegram, that unless it has a built-in, this is going to be something that's coming. Here's a prediction for you. Apps are going to have their own built-in keyboards. Privacy apps are going to have their own built-in keyboards because people say, oh, the encryption sucks. I want somebody to prove to me that the keyboards, the on-screen keyboards that you use aren't tracking everything that you type in. No one's going to be, I think that, that's how far you can go with this. Forget about the GPS pings and all that stuff. Everything you type into your phone, to your on-screen keyboard could be completely tracked, recorded, keylogged. So that's going to be the future, is where you have this entire software suite, and really Signal for iOS is kind of the first one of its bunch, I think, that creates this entirely secure environment, similar to what gets done for enterprise with like Knox and BlackBerry and others. Okay, Samsung Knox. So that's the thing. I mean, just keep in mind, and that'll be good. It needs to be a suite also, because that would be the only way that you could trick that whole battery and app solution, right? Is to where, oh, well, the suite was used, then, how could you correlate that? Because it's not like you could track Instagram or whatever. There needs to be a real fundamental restructuring of how apps are built and what they can do to solve this.
Babylon 5 ended a great war and united 100 alien races in peace. Danger didn't die. It just went underground, with new heroes and new evils to carry the torch.
We need to make sure they all understand we will not be intimidated.
What is wrong with you people?
We have to pit him against himself.
It's an entire new season of Babylon 5, with all new episodes.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
Oh, we made it.
They're not kidding when they say you're the best, Mr. Sovryn.
Oh, Elizabeth, you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, really?
Really? Why don't I show you?
Right here? Out in the woods? On the bike?
Elizabeth, I can rise to any occasion.
Ew. Brian. The climax.
It is time for the climax, where I talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. It could be a topic, could be a poem, could be a book, could be a TV show, could be a cartoon, could be a movie, could be an album, which, boy, I don't know if I mentioned this, but someone on, it was actually on Kick-Ass Torrents. It's kickass.to. They posted a Michael Jackson album, kind of a fan-made little compilation of some demos and really highly polished songs that have yet to be released. And we know that these exist. I've talked about it before because I'm a huge fan of Michael Jackson. Was a huge fan long before he died, unlike everybody else. And so because Sony said that they had like 17 albums worth of songs that they were going to work with, and so that they could just keep releasing a bunch of posthumous albums by Michael Jackson. And someone put up one called Nightline, Nite, Nightline, and it has some songs on there, especially the second track. Oh man, is that some good shit. I mean, you will be transported right back into time, in a heartbeat. Some of the quality, some of it's really demo quality, you can tell, but a couple of them, like the song Nightline and the second track, believe me, just solid gold. It's so good. At some point, I'm sure they'll get released, but for right now, you can download Nightline. Yay for torrents, because it allows fans to do what they really want with their passions. So anyway, speaking of fans and of passions, something I don't know if I've ever talked about it in the past on Sovryn Tech. Not to say that, because I'm about to talk about a show, actually a cartoon in particular, a franchise. Sometimes I might revisit franchises or shows or whatever and talk about them again because it'd been so long, because I don't expect everybody to listen to every single episode of Sovryn Tech. I think all of them stand the test of time because it's not just necessarily a current event show. There's a lot to go into, and I appreciate those. I know a lot of people listen to the entire back catalog very often, and I'm really honored for that. Okay, but I don't expect everybody to listen to it, so maybe at some points I'll talk about shows again. Like one of my favorites that I talked about almost 2 years ago was Spartacus, fantastic television show. But anyway, this week I want to talk about Robotech because some news came out. Before I touch on Robotech, because this was very Robotech-esque, there was a great Star Wars TIE Fighter video that was released this week on YouTube. Maybe I'll put a link in the show notes, in the appendix of the show notes, so you can check it out. And it was done in an 80s anime style, where it's like kind of, very hyper detailed, had great music going for it. And this was just an expansion of a video that we had talked about maybe a year ago or so, where this guy had done this sort of thing. It was much shorter, but now it's a full-on thing, and it is sexy. It is just some of the best Star Wars you'll ever see. So anyway, but it was definitely inspired by Robotech, as were so many. In fact, Robotech is known by many of its fans to be considered the greatest romance story of the 20th century. Seriously, it's considered that. It is, yes, it's a quote-unquote a children's cartoon. Came out in 1985 and has been, there have been animated movies and other things since. And it was a kind of an Americanized mishmash of Macross, of a cartoon called Macross, or an anime called Macross from Japan. And this is a popular thing to do. In fact, Power Rangers is, that's just a collection of scenes and mixed in with American actors, from a Japanese show to make an American show. So this has happened a lot over the years. But Robotech somehow pulled it off really, really well to where it became very much its own entity. And in fact, in many ways, it may be the better of the two. I'll leave that opinion up to other people. I like Robotech more than I like Macross, but I totally get the other argument. So anyway, because and one of the ways you can tell with Robotech is that with Macross, like they kind of they turned Robotech into this multi-generational story. What it has to do with, I didn't even explain what Robotech is real quick. What Robotech is a alien spaceship crash lands on an island on Earth. And pretty much, the United Nations start studying the ship, and they start making technology based upon this advanced civilization's, technology from the ship that crashed. And so they make these awesome, like, transforming, like fighters or, jets, fighter jets, like they're called Veritechs. Really, really cool. And they can transform into robots and all this stuff. And you find out that this alien race is the Zentradi, and the Zentradi are looking for their ship. And, eventually they come to Earth. And so then the Robotech force, which is kind of this defense force for Earth or the UN, has to handle the Zentradi invasion. And there's very grown up, very serious love stories that get built around this. And they take all the different generations from Macross and they kind of mix it up into where Robotech has this kind of a 3-stage has like 3 different generations, and you get a couple characters that kind of stick through the whole thing, but like, it's a full story. I mean, you really get a lot. And there's the American producers of this did a great job of using the Macross source material and making it all kind of, mesh together, all meld together, even though it's covering decades of time. And out of order largely from how Macross, the Japanese anime had originally set it up. And I mean, Robotech is just, anybody that thinks back, anybody that grew up in the 80s or got to see maybe some kind of reruns in the 90s, perhaps, everybody looks back on it very, very fondly, because I think it was a cartoon or an anime, whatever you want to, however you want to call that didn't treat children like they were stupid, that didn't treat children like what they were seeing. It really didn't water things down at all. And I mean, it still watered things down from Macross, because Japanese cartoons are viewed by adults, as to where in America, I mean, that's all changing now. That delineation doesn't really exist anymore, but it did once. But they, anime is high drama in Japan. That's the point, as to where in America, particularly in the 80s, anything that was animated was for children, or generally that was the case. Not always. And so I think that was part of why Robotech was looked upon so fondly, is because even more so than your own parents, it treated you like you understood that there were things like love, that there was things like death, that there, all of these very adult issues that most cartoons steer very much away from. And that's what makes Robotech great. And so what I want to highlight is, because there was an announcement this week that Sony Pictures was able to secure the rights for Robotech. And so they will not be making a new anime. Maybe they'll make some kind of like kiddie version side project. I don't know. But they will be making movies, and their intent is to make a film franchise. And they plan on this coming out pretty fast. I think they even want it to be developed and out there probably by next year. Now, the initial argument, of course, is that, well, clearly, Sony, or that Hollywood in general, has just completely run out of original ideas. Okay, now I wouldn't mind a live action, which is what this is going to be. It'll be a live action film. I don't mind the idea of a live action Robotech film. I welcome it. I want to see it myself, actually. I'd love to see a whole franchise of movies, in this vein. And I think that'd be fantastic. But here's the concern. Here's what's really going on. And this is what happens when you take any of these classic franchises, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, take your pick of the bunch, though admittedly, like the first G.I. Joe movie was incredible. That totally good job on that one. In all seriousness, I thought that was a fantastic movie. But with Robotech, and I want to quote, there was a story in Variety. They're the ones that got the exclusive to announce this. And they're talking to the guys that are going to be creating the film, that are going to be producing the film. And this is it from Sony here. When the rights to Robotech became available, we jumped. Mark and I knew it had what big movies in today's world must have. Key thing here. If they want to grab everyone. Insane visuals and powerful themes, said Nunari. Quote, the characters in Robotech wrestle with both the destructive and redemptive powers of technology. Nothing is more relevant today than that. Okay, so let's touch on this. the main thing I want to deconstruct here is that the quote, we jumped, Mark and I knew it had what big movies in today's world must have if they want to grab everyone. There's the whole problem right there. This movie's going to suck ass. This movie's going to be absolute fucking shit. Okay, if you are looking for any kind of, resurgence or return to the greatness that you experienced from the 85 cartoon and even some of the later movies, like, I like Shadow Chronicles. I thought that was good. Is the fact that they wanted to appeal to everyone. Total failure. Folks, art is subjective. Okay, art is never meant to appeal to a piece of art cannot appeal to everyone. That's impossible. Otherwise, we're the Borg. Everything is up to individual tastes. But this is exactly the mindset in Hollywood, is how can we, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, I'm not saying that, but they're saying, how can we make the most bang for the buck? How can we dumb this shit down to the lowest common denominator so that everybody will buy a ticket? How pathetic. How pathetic. To not be willing to take a risk on for Hollywood, and this isn't new news, but this is just, they're so blatant about it now. Yes, we just want to reach everybody. We're not concerned about the fans because you already have a built-in base. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, say I stop doing it, I'm not going to, but say I ever stop doing Sovryn Tech. I could come back in a few years and restart it, and I would already have kind of a built-in base, and those are the people that I would largely be wanting to reach, is, that old base. Yeah, I want to reach new people too that maybe hadn't experienced it before, but I would feel some confidence in having that old base, and those are the people you want to appeal because that's the guaranteed money. Trying to reach out to everybody is a lost cause. It's a failure in art to try and do. I know what it's like. I'm developing things, okay? I'm not trying to reach everybody. I know it's going to be a minuscule, not a minuscule, but I know it's going to be a smaller audience compared to what, say, Grand Theft Auto or whoever, or Call of Duty is going to reach out to. Hell, I don't even want to reach out to people to play Call of Duty. You cannot possibly be concerned with making a great film, a great work of art, and be concerned about pleasing everyone. You can't do it. It's antithetical to developing something beautiful. It really is, because it should be an expression of what you want in something. That's what art's all about. So I saw that and I was just like, I was like, oh my God, I saw the initial news and my eyes saw stars. I was just like, oh, this is going to be, yes, finally a Robotech film. And then I read that. We want to be, it has what it takes to reach out to everybody. There's 7 billion people on the planet. You really don't have to try to appease the masses. You don't really have to, even try and make something that you would consider to be popular. You don't, because there's just so many goddamn people, and people you would hope to promote individualism, and people will want to, they'll choose what they want, and you'll have to appeal to somebody. And those people will appreciate your passion, and they'll be passionate about it. This dumbing down of these franchises that aren't dumb at all. And, let's be clear on this too. The whole technology thing, yes, that was kind of that was definitely a part of Robotech, but that's not the heart of Robotech. The heart of Robotech is literally matters of the heart. It was the romance, with Roy Fokker. Everybody knows that joke. Anyway, it's the heroism, even the cheesy lines, all that stuff, a lot of that, and just seeing cool ships. It wasn't about the debate over technology necessarily. So I think they've got this all wrong. Robotech's great. If you want to see some great Robotech, guess what? Good thing. The original will always be here. It will stand, and it still stands the test of time because it still looks and acts good. So maybe we'll get a great Robotech game out of this. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not looking forward to the film, but please don't hesitate to look forward for what's coming from Sovryn Tech. New episode next week, as always. Carpe Lucem, everybody. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced
Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.